Hi guys, Jason Thompson from jasonthompsonbooks.com here. Doing an interview today with the author Greg Millwee, who wrote the book The Alleyway Preacher. It's an amazing book, and I was able to read this book and I found it very inspirational. It had a lot of things in it that I enjoyed. Number one, it had a life-changing event for someone. Number two, it had action in it, which is a big thing for me. It had a little bit of a love story that you could get into, but the greatest part about the book is it's all good things that Christians can read and not worry that they're going to take in something they shouldn't be taking in. So before we get any further, I'm going to introduce our author, Greg Millwee. Greg?
Hey,
Thanks a lot for being here today, and I really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to just speak to the fans today and speak to the viewers. And first question I'm going to ask is, number one, how can they get this book? How can they get The Alleyway Preacher?
There's several avenues you can go through to get the book. You can go to Amazon.com, booksamillion.com, barnesandnoble.com. But probably the best place to go would be my own personal website. It's Millweebooks.com. All those avenues are right there. There's a quick link. You can go to any of those.
Great. I've actually been able to go on the website and check it out. And Greg, it's a great website. You've done a wonderful job putting it together. It's very functional. And like you said, you can get the book on the website from all of those avenues. Now let me ask you this question before we get into the actual how you wrote the book and things. Are there any retail locations? Either are there some now, or do you have plans to have any retail locations?
I do have plans for some retail locations. They're in the works right now. But hopefully very soon they'll be in some retail places, and I'll put that on my website as well.
Great. So look for updates on that. If you're not a computer person, you don't like to order things online, I understand that. I like to actually go purchase one myself. He, like he says, he's working on that, and it will be available on the website. He'll let you know more about it. First of all, we're going to get into, Greg, what inspired you to write the book, The Alleyway Preacher? I mean, this is not a 50-page short story. This is a full-on book. This is 350 pages. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
This is a full book with an amazing story with amazing characters. What inspired you and gave you the inspiration to write this book?
From an early age, I'd always been interested in writing short stories, poems, even songs. But God really laid it on my heart to write this book. One morning, I got woke up in the middle of the morning, and it was like God had crammed a movie in my mind, and He gave me all the high points for this book, and I just had to be obedient and connect the dots and sit down and do it. It started out as a bit of a free writing exercise, just to get me acclimated to the whole process. But it was really good. I learned a lot about myself and about God through this whole process.
Okay, so first of all, God gave you this story. He put it in your mind and told you to write this story, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, for those of us out there who are not fortunate enough to have God really lay on our hearts, this is the story I want. If you out there, you're thinking about, hey, I'd love to write a book. Do you have any kind of ideas to help people out there? If they'd like to write a book, what would you recommend the first thing they should do would be?
This might sound simplistic, but the first thing you need to do is sit down and actually write. I don't know how many pages I wrote that were just throwaway pages, just to get you into the process of writing. There was a lot of surprises in the book that I never planned. They just kind of came out of the free writing process.
Right.
So just commit yourself to actually sitting down and writing it and going from there.
Okay. So first of all, you would recommend, if there is a book in their minds and they know that I want to write this book, just sit down and start writing. That's what you would recommend for them just to get started with.
Well, you're not going to sit down and just chart out the entire book and have everything just planned out. At least that wasn't how it was for me. So there's going to be some back and forth, and you're going to have to do some editing. But the most important thing is actually commit to sitting down and doing it on a regular interval.
Right. That's going to lead into my second question. How long did it take you to write this book? I mean, obviously you didn't just sit down and 2 weeks later. Well, I say that. Hopefully, it probably took you a little longer than that. How long did it take you to write this book?
So actually sitting down timeline-wise, it took about 4 years to do. There's a lot of times life intervened, heartbreaks, and sometimes I just didn't commit to actually doing it. But had I sat down and just done the whole thing from cover to cover without taking a break, it probably would have took somewhere around a year.
I understand that, and if you go to Greg's website, you will see that Greg is not only an author, but Greg is in ministry, and above that, he's got some sons and he has a wife. That's part of life, right?
Yeah, I have
large part.
three boys. They are highly active. They definitely keep you busy.
Exactly. I have a son and a wife myself, and I can attest to the fact that it is that's a large part of your life, and you have to be able to. From what I'm getting from you is a person has got to, number one, have the idea. Number two, they've got to be able to sit down and just start. Don't procrastinate. Just start to write. But number three, they've got to be able to go forth and say, you know what, I'm going to set aside this amount of time in my life to write this story. Correct?
Right.
Okay. So you got the story. God gave you the story, and that's an amazing story in itself. And I believe that God can do those things. He can show you where to go, what to do, and how to do things in life. And that's an amazing story that He gave you that. Once you got the story and you began to write and you really begin to put time into it, how long did it take you before you really begin to see the story develop and notice that the characters are beginning to have lives of their own?
Well, for me, it didn't really become a reality that I could actually write a book until I got over that century mark, that 100-page mark. Before that, it could have been just about anything. It could have been a short story, just something to kill the time. But once I got over that 100-page hump, it really started taking root in my mind that I really could go through with this.
Awesome. So you said 4 years. It took you 4 years to write this book. Was there any point during those 4 years? Because I imagine there are some people out there who are trying to write a book or have written a book, and maybe they have reached a point in their life to where I'm just tired of trying. Did you ever face that wall?
Several times. That's probably one of the reasons why it took 4 years. There would be weeks, months that I never even picked it up, where I felt like I just didn't feel like dealing with it or trying to go through with it. So yeah, there was definitely times where I felt like just throwing in the towel.
All right. And now for the people out there, our viewers today, what would you say above anything else kept you going with writing the book? What was it that made you keep going rather than say, I'm done?
My faith in God and my faith that God would use me through this entire experience. I don't believe that God puts anything on anyone's heart for just no reason, just to pass the time. I think that He gives it one for all of us have a purpose in Christ, and I really wanted to see that through fruition. And God really just He burdened my heart to finish it. So at those times where I wanted to quit and just throw in the towel, I felt that nudge to continue on.
Okay. Now, once you finally got to the end and you got to that point where you were like, that's the final page, that's my story, what was your next step? Did you instantly have a publisher lined up, or did you know you had the next great American novel on your hands, or did you struggle with trying to find someone to do it? Did you struggle to find someone to edit your work? What was your next step after finishing, after pushing through? What was your next step?
I actually toiled with that a lot. I didn't know what to do with it. You don't really have a whole lot of people just handing out information on what to do when you're a new author. So there was a trial period in there where I felt like I was kind of blowing in the wind. The biggest hurdle for me was finding somebody to actually edit my work. I'm not a professional writer per se, so the grammar and the spelling was really hard for me to try to find somebody that would commit to doing it in a somewhat timely manner.
Right. I struggled with that myself because, and if I had a recommendation for the viewers today, it would be to find an editor for your work. Don't just pay some company $600 to edit your work because they say they will. Find someone you can trust, and it's not easy. And as Greg here has told us, it's hard to find someone you can trust to do your work. But I highly recommend, and as you've heard, Greg highly recommends, you find someone you can trust to edit your work early on in the process so that you have that done when you're done with the book. So once you got finished with the book, you struggled with finding someone to edit, and you obviously struggled with finding someone to publish. And as a lot of viewers out there don't know, like you just kind of mentioned, publishers don't line up to take in books from people that are not already authors.
No, they don't.
Right. Now, what did you do? How did you finally find someone that could get your work from your computer to a hard copy book and a digital copy book that people could buy around the world?
Well, I looked online in several places, and I had a friend that also authored a book, and he went through a company online called CreateSpace. It's a self-publishing company, and you submit everything, and they print off the book for you.
Awesome. Now, was that kind of an expensive process? Now, we don't really need to know exactly. I mean, that's personal stuff. But for our viewers, and I'll let you know, viewers, that I used CreateSpace myself. It is the company I decided to go with. As an unknown author, it is extremely hard to find someone to publish a book for you. And I say that because I don't want you as a viewer to misunderstand that, hey, I wrote a book, somebody's going to take this thing and it's going to go around the world and be a hit story. It is a long process, and I chose CreateSpace myself through research. They are a reputable company, and it is a rather cheap way to get your book out there. So what did you think of the process and the cost involved opposed to some of the others that are out there?
Well, I did a good bit of research, and there's many avenues you can go, but not all of them had really good reviews. You'll have a lot of companies that will honestly just take your money just to throw it out there, which is one reason why I decided to go with CreateSpace. You don't get the back-end promotion that some of the other places are offering, but you have complete control over all that yourself. So to me, it was just a better avenue to pursue than to try to put, something that I worked so hard and try to just trust somebody that I didn't really know that well.
Right. So the name of that company, once again, if you did not hear, it was CreateSpace. Like I've said, I used CreateSpace. Greg used CreateSpace, and throughout the entire process, they deal very fairly with the authors that turn in their books. As you can see, and I've showed it to you several times, I'm going to show it to you again. They produce a great product. It is not cheaply made. You have really well done covers. The pages are done great, and when you submit your work in for review, they are very easy to follow their guidelines and how you turn in your book, and they can show you exactly what to do. But